today, and we're here with Charlotte Gambill.
We've given people, a platform gives you elevation, but if you're on a platform without revelation, you can't sustain the weight of that platform. So we have people that have been elevated because they've asked to be elevated. They want to be elevated. I'm leaving if I'm not going to be elevated. So elevate me. And then we elevate them. And then we end up with the catastrophe of, well, we put you in a position that you weren't ready for. And I think we have leaders that are in a hurry to get to a place of profile. They then fall or fail. And now they're wiped out because now they've got trauma because we let them do something before they were ready. And now when they are ready, they don't want to do it because they failed the last time they tried. When Jesus called the disciples, it was 2 words. But for our calling, we need a prophecy, we need a poem, we need five anointed apostles to call us out. We need thousands of followers. We need, you know what I'm saying? Like, it was follow me.
Hey, welcome to the table, and we are glad to see you, glad that you joined us today, and we're here with Charlotte Gambill. And I think you're sort of interesting to me because like there's certain circles like everybody knows you, and then I had people like, "What's her last name?" And so I think, have you done much in Arizona? Previously?
I really haven't. No, I've been to Arizona several times, but this is the first time speaking in Tucson. So
Okay.
yeah, so
Awesome.
I obviously know the Barnett family, so I've been there a few times.
Yeah.
But no, I'm not. I'm typically when I've come, it's always seemed to be East Coast heavy over
Okay.
West Coast.
Right.
So
Right.
and once you get stuck in East Coast, it's hard to get out.
True.
Right.
And you know what they say
Right.
about West Coast? It's the best coast. So anyways,
So welcome.
Welcome to the right side of the whatever it is. So, but anyways, and so just this morning, Mr. Design City, but we love to take this opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
We call it the table just simply because most of our life-changing, important conversations as a family always happen around a table. You know, we talked about good things, bad things.
Right.
You know, we agreed, disagreed, even with our kids. And so trying to create that atmosphere. So I guess nothing's off limits. Maybe, I guess you can tell me if something's off limits.
I'll let you know.
Eventually, like, that's off limits. That's just, we're not talking about that. So anyways, we're glad you're here. So I have a couple questions, just fun ones to start off with.
Okay.
And then Dane's going to come with the heavy, hard-hitting, people want to know stuff. So you recently, how long ago did you move to the States?
So we emigrated in June. So really recent.
So we are a country that allows immigration. That's
Yes,
the first
just to
thing.
be clear.
I guess it depends on what country you come from. And so June. So that's literally, what is this?
Not even 6 months.
Not even 6
Right.
months. Okay. So I'm always fascinated when I talk to friends from the UK, friends from Europe. So what was your first realization, I know I'm in America now, sort of experience?
Well, I've been coming to America for a long
Sure,
time,
yeah.
so I'm back and forth. But we were just talking off the table microphone about an experience we had going to Alabama where people told us to go to something called Buc-ee's. And
you kind of like a little Alabama twitch.
Buc-ee's. Which we didn't
I thought
have.
it was Busey.
I have no idea how you say it.
That's the fancy way.
If my
Bougie.
kids were to say it, because they have a much stronger accent than me, they'd be like Buc-ee's. So we went, and
Let's go to the Buc-ee's.
all I can
love
say,
it.
it was like going to an alternative universe. I was like, what in the world is this? And I'm like, why do we buy pajamas and candles and a barbecue grill and buy beef jerky all in the same store?
And get
I
your
have
gas.
absolutely no idea.
I just stopped for gas. That's
There's
all.
a few things where we walk through the sliding doors and we're like, what just happened? So, but I've got used to the American lifestyle from all the years. But now we're here.
Now you're here.
I mean, we're driving on the wrong side of the road.
For
So
sure.
there's that,
There
which
is this.
I'm used
It's
to, but
strange.
my 18-year-old and my 21-year-old are not used to. So
Right.
it's just little things like, in Alabama where we're based, there's not much sidewalks.
Right.
Because there's trees and there's the road. And in England, you would walk for miles. Just,
Exactly.
Transportation is you get on a train
Right.
or you
Walk to
catch
the
a
bus.
bus.
And
And so having to drive everywhere
Yeah.
is kind of, I'm kind of over that. I'm like,
Yeah.
really?
Yeah.
I have to drive to the store. I can't just
True.
walk around the corner. So
Wow.
yeah. So some things that we're just adapting to
That's
now
good.
being our everyday. Yeah.
So the food portions have gotten larger.
Oh my gosh. We share everything.
And they
yeah.
and more frequent. That's welcome to America.
Yeah.
Here's your 20 pounds. So
Yeah.
that's awesome. Well, that's exciting. I think welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome to America. And so, we're glad to have you.
So what do you
as one of
miss
ours.
the most
Yeah.
from the UK?
You know, right now we're all good. I keep checking in on everybody. I'm like,
Right.
is everybody good? And
Uh-huh.
I mean, we miss people. Like, you know,
Sure.
I've left my family and
Right.
my best friend of 43 years.
Mm.
And so that kind of is the part that I miss. But
Right.
the good thing about where we used to live in England was very countryside and lots
Mhm.
of trees and
Yeah.
hills. And we've
Mhm.
moved to trees
Yeah.
and hills.
Alabama,
So
yeah.
I at least feel like I've got some of the green that I would have missed.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I think right now we're all good. We kind of miss some of the, we don't have a home right now. We're building one. So we
Right.
miss having somewhere that's home.
Yeah.
You know, we
Yes.
have a temporary place, but when
Yeah.
you're living temporary,
Yeah.
you don't have that settling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm missing that. I think
Mhm.
I'm missing my home.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think even homes in America versus
Mm-hmm.
wherever you're at in England, I mean, the size wise, I mean,
Right.
we just like everything's big. Like
Yeah.
I'm sure
Yes.
kids probably, their rooms, all that kind of stuff. So that's
Yeah.
exciting.
Yeah.
What an awesome experience for you
Yeah,
guys to
it
be able to
is.
do that.
Yeah.
So, well, we want to talk about church stuff a little bit today
Mm-hmm.
and ministry stuff. And so, and really, this is opportunity, I think, for people just even to hear, maybe they don't know you,
Mhm.
to hear your heart and experiences. I mean, you've preached all over the world.
Mm.
So give us a little rundown on the Charlotte Gambill bio. You know, obviously you and your husband senior pastored.
Uh-huh.
Tell us about like the process of ministry for you.
So I grew up, my parents had me as teenagers. They weren't married.
Okay.
Mhm.
Both of them completely heathen, unsaved,
Wow.
not from any background at all that anybody believed in God.
Uh-huh.
And my dad, as a teenager, he was 16, 17. My mum was 17 when she was pregnant with me.
Uh-huh.
And so he was in trouble with the principal of the school for like the 1,000th time for beating up some other kid. And it was the principal in the school that when he was in detention gave him the cross and the switchblade to read.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow.
David
And
Wilkerson,
through
yeah.
that, my dad became a believer.
Wow.
And this guy ended up actually, he was pastoring a church. He was teaching and
Wow.
pastoring.
Uh-huh.
And so that was the church that my parents took me to in, a baby crib basket.
Uh-huh.
And that is the church that I stayed in all my life.
Wow.
Wow.
So I was in the same church all my life and went through my parents attending it as, new believers,
Right.
to them being on part of the serve team, to them then pastoring it, to
Wow.
then us
Wow.
pastoring it.
Wow.
So yeah, I'm a local church girl through and through. And,
Uh-huh.
I think there's very few of us left
Yeah.
that have been somewhere that long
Yeah.
and stayed the kind of the length of the journey it takes to
Mhm.
appreciate all seasons of church.
For sure.
But that was my journey. I met my husband. He's from America. That's a whole different story. But he actually visited the UK, and that was when we first met. And then we met 4 years later again. And so we've been together 33 years.
Wow.
So yeah, and he was a youth pastor for a season, and then we stepped into senior leadership. So
Mhm.
yeah, all my life, I've been involved in building church.
Yeah.
And actually, the last thing I thought I would be doing is standing up in front of people, because I'm totally the behind the scenes girl.
Mm.
I made things happen. I helped run the kids ministry. I
Uh-huh.
was the administrator. I was my dad's PA for
Yeah.
years. And
Yeah.
the last thing I thought I'd do was step up. So it was a total God setup that I
Yeah.
ended up doing what I was doing, not a plan I had.
That's
So yeah.
amazing. That's amazing. That's such an awesome. I was thinking about the longevity. I mean,
Mhm.
50 years in one place. It's so underrated, I think, especially in our
Yeah.
culture.
Yeah.
I think when I look at Zion City, it's had 3 senior pastors in 50 years.
Uh-huh.
Right.
And the founder, one pastor for everybody 20 plus years.
Mm-hmm.
And I just thought that's just one of those, like, if
Right.
you want to, like, I think division really diminishes
Mhm.
because if you're here for the long haul, like,
Right,
okay,
yeah.
we got to work this
Right.
out. We can't just get
Right.
mad and leave or,
Right.
Right.
you
right.
know, or I need to go someplace
Right.
else. And, I heard one guy say the average stay of a pastor in America is like 3 to 4 years, senior pastor. And their kind of hypothesis around it was that after 3 or 4 years, you've gone through all your bag of tricks.
Right.
All your great messages. You preached all your messages. You've done all the new things and new vision. And now you're like, everybody's like, now what do I do? And so they feel like I just need to, I need to start over and go pull my bag of tricks out again. And there's something to that longevity, I think, that that is so life-giving over seasons. You know, I mean, you've watched people probably born, married, you know, all of that.
Yeah, all of it.
Every season of life with people.
Yeah.
And that's an awesome thing.
And I think, honestly, you know, one of the things that has been to the church's detriment is that we have had a cycle and we have had a season where there's been so much emphasis on the platform that the platform has become the thing to attain and obtain. And so why would you stay in a church that's not giving you a platform? And why would you remain on a team if you're only getting to preach once every however? And so because the goal or what we've deemed success has become something that is elevated and something that is so visible, nobody wants to be invisible, and everybody sees being not elevated as somehow being, you know, not seen as worthy or as valuable as something else.
So good.
And that's what's played out in the church. But what's happened is we've given people, you know, a platform gives you elevation. But if you're on a platform without revelation, you can't sustain the weight of that platform. So we have people that have been elevated because they've asked to be elevated. They want to be elevated. I'm leaving if I'm not going to be elevated. So elevate me. And then we elevate them. And then we end up with the catastrophe of, well, we put you in a position that you weren't ready for. I remember years ago, we took our son to Disney World and our daughter, and our son was only 3, and he was like a Velcro child. Wherever I went, my son went. Like he was a mama's boy. And his older sister wanted to ride the Tower of Terror. Well, he's 3, so he's not ready to ride the Tower of Terror. So I had this brilliant idea, because he wouldn't listen to our no. I'll take the child with me through the line. And when we get there, I know Disney staff measure them. So I'm like, there's no way he's going to pass the measuring stick. So she can be the one to break the bad knee string, right?
I'll
Not
be good
me,
mom.
right? So we get all the way up to the measuring stick. Well, that morning I'd mohawked his hair. So they had it all gelled up. So when she measured him, she didn't measure his actual height. She measured his hair
You're
height.
like, no, wait, no, measure that again.
So we got on the Tower of Terror, and you can imagine what happened. He was absolutely horrified, and every parent was judging me.
Like the
worst
the
parent
Tower of
ever.
Terror. Like that should have been your clue.
Exactly.
Tower of Terror.
But I remember afterwards.
He's had therapy now, so it's good.
I remember afterwards thinking, how true is that we've put people in places based on their artificial height, not on their actual height. And then what happened with my son was, we went back to Disney several times years later, and he will not ride the ride because of the memory that's triggered. And I think we have leaders that are in a hurry to get to a place of profile. They then fall or fail, and now they're wiped out because now they've got trauma because we let them do something before they were ready. And now when they are ready, they don't want to do it because they failed the last time they tried. So I think that's one of the things that when you do longevity, you work out of your system. You know, you're like the faithfulness gets that out of your system because, hey, I'm so used to being behind the scenes that I'm not looking for anyone to put me in front of the scenes.
It's interesting.
Don't you think, though, that is really tied a lot in with social media, what we celebrate, what we put up as
that's good.
And I think we're seeing a lot of destruction happening in churches now, at least in America, you know, I mean,
it's
so
the same
many,
everywhere.
and
people.
It saddens my heart to think how Jesus must feel with what we have created seemingly in his name.
Yeah, all of that social, I mean, that didn't exist, you know, back in the day, right? So now we have that added pressure, but it's on the shoulders of a generation that if they've not had the longevity, they can't handle the added pressure of what that, so everybody's trying to compete in something that none of us should be competing in.
So good.
Exactly.
So I have maybe a strange question, and just I could be totally off on this and wrong, and we'll talk about leaders in a second, but you are your, and I mean this in the most positive sort of way. So when I say reputation, I mean that in a good way.
Right.
I like your reputation precedes you. Like, oh, really? I mean, like, obviously, preacher, strong gifting of revelation. I mean, it was evident this morning. So, what is your relationship like with preaching? Do you love preaching? Do you preach? If you had a way to describe that, and maybe this is a weird question because I have this sense of something, but go ahead. I just want to.
I don't love preaching.
Yeah, thank you.
So I have had a revelation.
Yeah,
that God gives according to your ability.
Exactly.
And I'm responsible for the bag, as it were, of coins that he gave me to invest them wisely.
Yeah.
And so for me, I know that God has given me the gift of communication. I find it easy to take complex things and make them something that everybody can consume. I can see things in scripture that I'm like, oh, okay, well, let me pull this out and spend time. And I'm disciplined. I spend hours and hours and hours studying and preparing and writing, and I'm always writing content. So I know that's my ability. So preaching is just a vehicle for me to do what God's called me to do. So is writing an article, so is sitting one-on-one, so is sitting at this table, so is answering someone's question. They're all areas where my ability is able to be something that I give back to God and invest into others. And it took me a long time to be okay with that. And I think one of the things in churches, and one of the things that frustrates pastors, coming back to that leadership part, is, you know, when you're a senior pastor, everybody expects you to do everything. I mean, you're supposed to do human resources. You're supposed to come up with a message. You're supposed to run the budget for the church. You're supposed to have the vision. You're supposed to deal with the staff issue. You're supposed to deal with the conflict in that, you know, like, which means if God gave you certain things that, you know, God's made you good at, the frustration is I can't get to that because I'm having to do all of this other stuff. And I think there's a difference between responsibility and ability, right?
So good.
We can be responsible for a lot of things, but that doesn't mean we're working on our ability. So for me, I'm always trying to stay in that place where my ability is getting time and it's getting investment, because that is my best gift to the kingdom, right? So if I'm not communicating in whatever form, I'm not getting out of me what God put in me. And so I think I wrestled with it because I'm an introvert and I don't like the limelight. And you know, you can talk to, you know, my social media girl, you could talk to her and she'll tell you that she's probably been pulling her hair out just getting me to put stuff on my social feed because she's like, because I have to get past the thing of I don't want to enter the trap that everybody's in, and and I don't want to be associated with that because that's not who I am. But I understand also it's a great method for helping people. So
people want to connect.
But if it's seen the right way, then it's a useful tool, right? But no, I don't love to preach. I love to help people. And the way God's wired me in the way I best help people and pastors and leaders is in communication.
I thought you might answer that way because I think there's an assumption that if you preach, especially at the capacity that God has given you, that, you know, you must just get off the pulpit and just be like, you know, every day, you know what I mean? And I even noticed it even today as you were walking off the platform and the guy's like, let's just, you know, and they want to give honor where honors due. And I've had that feeling at times where you just walk off just like it's a weird moment. Like, I don't need all this. You know what I mean? That's not what I'm. Thank you. Look, let's go on to something else. And I think, do you think in this struggle of like what you're talking about, the facades, you know, because there are guys who love to preach, like, and maybe don't have revelation, but they love to preach, or maybe they do. And I think that's all, that's great. But I think there's something about loving the helping people part of this.
I love to build.
However that
to
shows
build. That's
up.
what I said this morning when I was up with the church. Like, I'm not here to bless. I'm here to build. Like, and I love to serve. So I'm not here to do my thing. I'm here to help you do your thing.
So huge.
So even in my communication today, I'm not speaking about my latest, greatest message.
Right.
I'm pulling something out to help with this
and
generosity.
it feels different. I mean, as a pastor, when you have somebody in here who goes, I'm actually here to add value and make a deposit here versus push my latest thing that God's given, which is great.
Right.
But, there's time and place for all of that. But I think but leadership's hard. And so I think that's one of the things that we want to ask about. It's just, you see a lot of leaders.
Yeah. So what do you feel like God is saying to pastors? Like, I mean, if that is the gift that God is giving you now to share,
right, tell people
what is it? What is that message right now?
I think right now, honestly, I think honestly, we've got to get back to just the simplicity.
Yeah.
This is actually really simple, guys.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying? Like, we've made it so complicated, and it's about how many followers and having 55 conferences and starting a leadership school, and that might be what God's called you to do. And I have no problem with that, but just make sure that it's coming from that place of that is what God's called you to do, rather than I think that's what makes our church grow, or I think that's what makes us successful. Right. Because actually the simplicity is what makes a church grow. Yeah. It's you pointing them to Jesus and then finding a way to connect with the God in them and get God's hand on their life and God to use them to reach other people. It's as simple as that. When Jesus called the disciples, it was 2 words. But for our calling, we need a prophecy, we need a poem, we need five anointed apostles to call us out.
I need a mantle.
We need thousands of followers.
We need a sword.
You know what I'm saying?
Like exactly.
It was follow me.
Yeah.
And there was nothing else coming.
Yeah.
And the simplicity, because honestly, I think we've all got to get back. I had this thought just 2 days ago in my hotel room. I think there's stuff sat on the shelves of people's lives. Yeah. That doesn't belong to them. Yeah. But humanity, divinity has chosen humanity for delivery. Right. Which is crazy. Because I wouldn't. Right. If I was God, I'd be like, this is a very unreliable delivery service. Like, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. And so that's how simple it is. Yeah. We're supposed to take what God just told us, and then we're supposed to dispatch and deliver it to who he told us to do it to. But there's so much obedience interference, agenda, editing, putting my spin on it, things that get on the shelf of my life, but I'm going to hold on to it for a while because I don't think now's the right time, or I don't want to do this right now. And I had a package that it was a rug that I'd ordered for our apartment, and I got a message saying it being dispatched. So I got excited because I actually needed it in a certain window because, the rug is the anchor piece. I can't put the sofa down. I can't put the coffee table down till the rug's here. And I had like 48 hours to do what I needed to do. So, but there was no rug. And so I ring up the company and I'm like, do you have the rug? They're like, oh yeah, it's been here for 3 days. I was like, well, how far away are you? Like 20 minutes. I was like, well, they were like, oh, it's been dispatched, but it's not been delivered. Right. And I was like, you don't understand my time frame, so you're not urgent. Right. Where I'm over here with a 48-hour time frame that I need this to be delivered in. And I think if we understand that in our natural life, how much more is that happening in the spiritual? Yeah. Because we've complicated. So whenever you make ministry complicated, or you add layer upon layer upon layer. So now God tells the pastor, God tells the leader, this is what I need you to do. But now we have 55 meetings. Right. Now we have everybody's version of events. Yeah. Now, are your feelings okay? Are you okay? Yeah. Are you all right with this? Yeah. Does everybody, no, well, this is not a good time for me. Oh, this is not a good time for me. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't have accountability and those, but I do think we've added so many layers that we're slowing down what God needs to get done because there's so much obedience interference. And Jesus was like, follow me. Right. That's it. Because I'm checking your obedience. Yeah. And if you interfere at this level, you're going to interfere when I tell you, eat my flesh and drink my blood. You're going to definitely interfere then if follow me is too much. Yeah. And the more I go back and read my Bible, and the more I read stories about people like Esther, you realize if she'd not done what she did in the time frame she'd done it, then the king wouldn't have been conducive to her coming to his asking for the scepter to be extended. He wouldn't have been kept up at night reading the book, which was about Mordecai. The timing was crucial. And I think for us, a lot of times our complexity or our agendas or all of our ambitions or whatever that is, our pride, our ego, our insecurity has created this long process, which you end up with something that's edited. It's not the original.
Right.
It's not what God originally said.
Right.
It's an edited version of what he said.
So good.
It's good.
That's such a good word. I think it's important. A lot of that you talk about leaders with, whether it be pride or insecurity or fear of man and things like that. And there's a lot of talk right now about health, holistic sort of, emotional health, which I'm thankful for on some level. What are you seeing? I mean, you have a lot of conversations with leaders. What are you seeing as a consistent, beyond the complexity that we add, but what are you seeing as a consistent struggle point, that is out there amongst leaders, or you feel like is just consistent? I think all people are kind of people. So, what are you seeing with leaders?
Well, I think, once you start to build layers between reality and what you present, we're in trouble, right? So I think a lot of leaders, because of the pressure on their shoulders, are creating a barrier between actually what's really going on and actually what they're presenting is going on. Because I'm in fear that if people actually know the real me, this will be taken from me. Right. And so we tidy it up. We put a filter on it. We don't actually say what needs to be said. And so we have a lot of superficial things in our life. Who are you accountable to? So-and-so. Or where do they live? 5,000 miles away. How often do you talk to them? Once every 5 years.
And I tell them what I want them to
hear. And so you're like, that is not accountability. That's
Yeah.
something we've created, which is not helping us be healthy. Right? Who are your friends? Oh, well, I don't really have any because, I don't want to bring anyone close because I'm the leader. Oh, well, that's just stupid. You need to find somebody that's in your world that you can say, we're in a really bad spot with one of our kids right now. We're having a nightmare. We're dealing with something as a family. We need someone to help us. Once you say that, the rug's pulled from under the enemy's feet. Because anything that's hidden, it's going to become something that is toxic. And it's going to be something that you're constantly trying to hide. Well, how many more layers can you put on it? It's like putting wallpaper over a cracking wall. The wallpaper looks pretty, but the crack's still there. And so I think a lot of people, because there are so many layers of wallpaper, it's exhausting to even try and get to the crack. And so I think, the focus on, okay, can we just get back to healthy relationships? Is your marriage healthy? Are your children healthy? Are you healthy? Are you okay? Is this too much for you? Is this, nobody wants to say it's too much for them.
Sure.
But, your no is just as powerful as your yes. And so I think it's a great spotlight to put on. It's uncomfortable for some, but honestly, God can only anoint your authenticity. That's what anointing rests on. So God's anointing if you're a sling and stone leader, then be a sling and stone leader. Don't try and put armor on and don't try and cover up something that needs to be covered up. If it needs to be talked about, talk about it. Find a circle. And I think we've seen enough disasters and we've seen enough untouchables that now, the sad thing is when you make yourself untouchable, the enemy goes, oh, you wait. Because the opposite's going to be true. Because now every media outlet's going to be after you. Everyone's going to be touching your business. Everyone's going to be talking about you. But it's not going to be for the reason you want it to be.
True.
So our removal actually creates something that the enemy's even able to use. It actually becomes a tool for him.
For sure.
Because
It's
then
absolutely
the
true.
exposure is massive. And don't be naive. The enemy is fine with you leading something that's growing, and he actually is invested in the growth of what you do if he knows the secrets in your cupboard. Because the more you grow, the more damage he can cause. The more collateral damage for the kingdom. So it's not a shock that it's not somebody with 20 people. It's someone with thousands of people, because the enemy could have done this at any time. Why would you not have done this when there was 20 people? Why would you not do this when there was 100 people? Oh, you're going to wait till there's all
Yeah.
of this and then this and then this. And you know what I'm
Uh-huh.
saying?
Yeah.
He's after the biggest fallout he
Yeah.
can have.
Yeah.
And the only thing that stops that is by us keeping short accounts.
That's so
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
That's so good.
So
You
great.
talk about that untouchable piece,
Mm-hmm.
and I may have said this somewhere along the way, but I had a professor who was a organizational psychologist believer, and she happened to be a woman that was called into some of these high profile failures of
Mhm.
pastors. And she does this as a volunteer. Like,
Right.
imagine that's the thing,
Right,
you
right,
volunteer
right.
for the church. Like,
Right.
I'll go
Right.
work. But she was dealing in her own denomination with pastors that were burnout,
Right.
quitting,
Mm-hmm.
moral failures, of
Right.
course. But on high profile things,
Mhm.
because she was just very gifted in this
Yeah.
area, she was called in for investigations
Mhm.
and to help kind of put the piece together.
Mhm.
And she made a statement to a group of pastors who were studying together. She said this. She said, the most dangerous place you can be is untouchable.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, but here's the problem. She said, it is typically first the person who becomes untouchable, and then the system they create enhances their untouchability.
Right.
So everybody's running around trying to protect. Like, because that's where you get the whole he or she, the man of God, the
Right.
woman of God,
Right.
and all of this. And like, they never have any problems.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so then that layers it, so she said, it's always it's the person, but then they create a system,
Right.
and then the system supports the person.
Right.
And eventually you find yourself, and she looked at a room full of pastors, and she just said, the most dangerous place you can be. And I took it to heart. I was like,
Mhm.
okay, like, this is the thing. If you ever look around and go, who can get a hold of me
Right.
and go,
Mhm.
hey man, you doing
Right.
all right? Hey, I don't,
Right.
this doesn't seem like
Right.
you,
Right.
you're pastor, you're
Right.
responding a little,
Right.
but I think this is even more than just ministry. This is
Right.
people in general.
Right.
Yes.
We become untouchable, insulated,
Right.
Uh-huh.
insular in that regard.
But as you're
Mhm.
talking, I'm immediately thinking of how Jesus was the opposite.
Yeah, exactly.
Because when the
Yes.
woman crawled through the crowd
Uh-huh.
Exactly.
and tried to touch him,
Right.
Uh-huh.
everybody tried to stop her.
Right.
Yeah.
Everyone's pushing her away.
Uh-huh.
And Jesus turns around and says, who touched me?
Right.
Mhm.
Making the point of, I am touchable.
Yeah.
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 Well, think
Who
about
touched me?
children with
Uh-huh.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Like the
Like, who
disciples are like,
touched me?
get
Yeah.
away, get away.
His
He's like,
team,
no,
he
no,
was
no.
trying to show his team, no,
Yep.
you
Yeah.
don't. The desperation of that touch is why
Mhm.
I'm here.
Exactly.
And I think you lose touch with why you're in ministry
Right.
Right.
when you become untouchable.
Yeah.
Right.
Like
Right.
you lose touch of the reason why God has entrusted you to lead those people.
Exactly.
When you become untouchable, how can
Mhm.
you lead people that you won't let? And that doesn't mean they're up in your business and at your house
Right.
every 5
No,
minutes,
exactly.
but your
Right.
heart and your posture is that you're there to serve them. They're
Right.
not there to serve you.
Right.
Yeah. And we
Right.
often say it's not everybody, but somebody. Like,
Right.
Yeah.
you may not be accessible to everybody in a
Right.
large church or in any, that it may not be possible,
Mhm.
but there has to be somebody
Yeah.
Right.
that's
Who knows?
accessible to,
Right.
and vice versa. And I think that
Mhm.
that it's interesting because that untouchability creates this isolation, and the isolation, she then went on to talk about the isolation, then it creates this idea of nobody knows what I'm carrying, almost a
Mhm.
self-pity.
Right.
Mhm.
Nobody knows what I'm
Very
carrying.
victim
Nobody knows what I
mindset.
go through.
Mm-hmm.
And they kind of start believing their own press,
Right.
a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
And she's like, every time she's like, every one of these I've done. And if I were to throw out names, these are names people would
Right.
know. And she's like, every time it's the same thing. Well,
Right.
nobody carries what. So
Right.
then the next step is that they feel like, well, she said it this way, I need to treat myself.
Right.
I need indulgences,
Right.
whether it's financial,
Right.
sexual,
Right.
whatever it might
Right.
be,
Right. Right.
abusive,
Right.
things
Right.
like addictions. Like, I just do this because nobody knows what I carry.
Right.
And she
Right.
said it always comes back to you being untouchable
Yeah.
Mhm.
and disconnected. And then the system.
Right.
So it's hard work. I literally came back to our elders and I was like, okay, I feel like I'm really pretty transparent with you guys and
Right.
accountable to you guys, but I want to make sure there are ways that you
Right.
can say no to me.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That you could say, no, I don't think that's a good idea for
Right.
you. I
Mhm.
said, I'd apprate if you do it with love and respect,
Right.
but
Right.
you
Right.
could say no.
He's
Right.
being
Right.
kind.
Right.
I
Right.
mean,
Right.
like, you don't have to be ugly about
Right.
it, but you have to be able to go like, no, I disagree with
Right.
that,
Mhm.
and be okay with that.
Mhm.
Right.
Like, okay, then we must reason out,
Mhm.
these
Right.
sorts of things.
Mhm.
It's just healthy.
Yeah.
That's what healthy marriages look like. It's what healthy parenting looks like.
For sure.
It's just healthy. And I think we've got so far from understanding, well, if it's not healthy, it's not good.
Exactly.
Like, but if you just strip it all back, it's like you would have this conversation with anybody, not just a pastor or a leader. Like you'd have it with the CEO of a company, or you'd have it with somebody in their marriage. It's like, we should be healthy. Like, so if you're not healthy, you're going to get sick.
Yeah.
And the more you leave it untreated, the sicker you're going to get. So it's really obvious when we say it that way,
right.
but it's amazing how we make it so confusing.
Don't you think that in the secular world, especially, and even in church world historically, health doesn't contribute to the bottom line. And so therefore, because in the secular world, you can be divorced, sleeping around, alcoholic, functioning, do your job, get the results.
Right.
Yeah.
And we don't care what you do. I'm talking about secular,
Right.
Right. And there's obviously a major shift in our culture. We realize that's not working.
Right.
But I think we brought that same idea kind of in the church, like be the preacher, be
all things, even though there's no possible way you can be all things
Right.
and healthy.
It's impossible.
But we still wanted that.
All the time.
We still wanted the super pastor.
Yeah.
And had expectations of that.
Yeah.
And there's no possible way.
Right.
Like when we step back and look at it, we really get like, of course you can't do that.
Right.
Yeah, there's just not time for all
We just
that.
didn't switch that in our brains.
It's amazing because I think because it's not contributed to the bottom line of, the profit and loss statement in the business world. In the church world, what's it all about? Well, it's typically, it's the number of, historically, I think the metrics have changed a bit. I think COVID was probably a blessing in some regard. There was a gift
some of it.
to like all the things you thought were valuable, like, they don't exist as clearly. Now, I know we're coming out of that. The question is, well, they'll return to that value system, I think. But it's like, does health contribute? Well, look at all these people being saved. Look at all these people coming to the church. Look at all these people. And I think the challenge is like, as a leader, if someone were looking at you going, Charlotte, I've got these things. How do I get healthy? How do I deal with this stuff without losing my mind or losing my job or that sort of thing?
Well, I think it's you work on your marriage, right? You've got to have a healthy relationship with God, your own relationship with God outside of the job you do for God, and a healthy marriage and your healthy kids. And I think honestly, if you focus on those things, that makes you be healthy as a person.
Right.
You can function and handle stress and pressure. I think we're thinking it's something that's really out there, that's really difficult. I think honestly, like I can talk to my husband, we can work something out, we can pray about it, we can laugh about it. Yeah. We have friends close to us that we can share that with. And honestly, that's the saving grace of why we can do all that we can do. It's like, those are the things that when they're in place, you live a healthy life. It's like if it was your natural body, there are certain things you should eat on a regular basis. Yeah. There's a certain amount of water you should drink on a regular basis. That's what marriage and family and friends are. They're the water and they're the food that on a regular basis helps keep you healthy. Yeah. They're the checking-in point. They're the don't get above your station. Like, don't think that you're all that. There's nothing like a good marriage to tell you you're not all that. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. But if you surround yourself with people that tell you you are all that, and then the wife or the husband becomes the negative person in your world, because no one else is saying that. So why are you saying that? Then that's unhealthy because you're paying those people. Yeah. So they're telling you.
It's amazing how kind
right?
they are.
You know what I'm saying? You ain't paying your wife. You're not paying your wife. You're not paying so they're telling you the truth, right? And these people over here are telling you what works in their current
self-preservation.
So honestly, I think, do I think there's things you could read and things you could do? Yes, absolutely. But let's not miss the basics of if your marriage isn't working, you need to go work on your marriage. Right. Yeah. And if your relationship with your kids is out of kilter, you need to go work on your relationship with kids. You know what I'm saying? That's how you get basic health that helps you carry the things that you can.
Yeah. Listen to you talk, it strikes me as those are just the converse that's true. If a great metric would be as if my marriage is struggling, that's a clear indicator. Right. Like what I'm doing in the pulpit is probably not as effective, deeply effective, maybe surface level, kids, those kind of things. So
I wanted to switch gears.
Yes.
So in US, in our world historically, and I won't name our denomination, women, especially preaching in the pulpit, has not been celebrated.
Uh-huh.
And it's work that we feel like
Right.
we need to do and change. How have you felt coming to the States? Have you bumped up against that? Do you feel like that's just non-existent?
So what you won't know about me is that the church that I was in for 50 years was very, in the beginning, exactly that. They did not believe in female speaking.
Right.
They didn't believe if you were actually related to someone in ministry, you should have a job in ministry.
Right.
If I actually prayed out loud as a woman, I had to have my head covered in public. So I was in the thick of it. So
You were hardcore.
So you understand.
Yeah. So when people see me and they think, oh, she's up there in her Doc Martin boots and she's just, always been liberated that way. No, I had to walk a journey. I think what I realized, and I think that's why God's given me a platform in the church, because I don't have an issue that I'm trying to settle. I'm not trying to fight a war. You're not my enemy. I'm trying to model something that is healthy. So I'm going to come and help the pastor. I want to serve the leader. I'm not, I'm a woman, hear me roar.
Right.
Like, give me a microphone because it's my turn. Because not every woman should have a microphone. No more than every man should have a microphone. Your gift makes room for you.
Right.
But I think, do I butt up against it? Yeah. I mean, there's places where I'm very good friends with the pastors. I go there on a regular basis and they say, we know when you get up, certain people walk out.
Yep.
But he's like, but we know more walk in.
Yeah.
Right.
So
Exactly
you know what? If that's the crew I have to lose in order to pioneer what it is I know I'm supposed to pioneer, then so be it. But I'm not getting up trying to make the issue about me being a female.
Right.
It speaks for itself. Just like back to health.
Yeah.
Just like in a healthy home,
Yep.
you have a mum and you have a dad, and they both carry a role and a responsibility. I literally just wrote. This is going on the female tangent, but I think it's fascinating to me. I told God I'm done with women's conferences, first of all, because I was like, I'm over it. Like,
So
I've
that
done
means
it.
there's a lot in your future. That's typically what that
well,
means.
Exactly. I kind of quit because I'd done it for years. I ran my own
exactly.
women's ministry. I grew it to thousands and thousands. I was like, I'm hanging up my hat. And so I was in my office studying. And when I was in my office studying for a leadership event, I found myself in the book of Genesis, and I found myself reading about Adam and Eve, which I've done thousands of times. But as I got to the part about Eve, I literally asked God a question, a bit like a Job moment, which I wished I'd not asked in the end, because then he did answer me. And I just was like, why the rib? Why in the world did you take a rib? Like, you could have done anything. Like, you could have spoken like you're God. Like, really, a rib? That's it. That's all we got.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's led into this whole revelation, which I call ribology, that I've just started making as a Bible study for churches. But male pastors are saying to me, it has been so amazing what this has done in the women of our church, because it's validating them, it's helping them, but it's in a healthy way.
Yeah, so
it's
good.
helping them know how to play their part in the church, because in a tiny synopsis of the study, the rib in your body does 3 things. It protects the heart. It helps the body breathe, and it gives a place of attachment and belonging. That's what a rib does.
Wow.
That's awesome.
Which, if that ain't a woman, I don't know what it is.
Exactly.
But on the converse side of that,
Yes.
if you are a rib and you're protecting the heart, guess who's taking the hit?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of women that feel unappreciated. They feel invisible because the heart gets all the attention, the heart gets all the appreciation, but I'm the one doing the job protecting it.
Yeah.
So as a woman, you're like, I've protected this family in my church. I've fought for this family in my church, and now they're just walking out.
Yeah.
And I took the hit for that. I watched my husband take that hit. I watched that person say what he said.
Yeah.
And I took the hit, and with our kids. And so I wrote this Bible study.
You're making me cry.
Yeah. And that's what happens.
Yeah.
Because suddenly you feel seen and you feel understood. And in that is an empowering. And one of the parts I get to that is always in the room, the aha moment, is a rib's not a singular bone. It belongs in a rib cage. I don't really want to do life with a bunch of women.
Yeah.
But God designed the women to be a rib cage. But there's nothing like a rib to damage the body. So your ribs are not all attached in the same way.
Right.
And the last 2 ribs are actually called floating ribs.
Right.
And when trauma happens, they disappear in the body. They can puncture a lung. They
Mm.
can sever an artery. And I say to the women, there's nothing like a woman to split a church.
Yeah.
Wow.
She'll take off and she's hurt. And so she'll hurt and she'll say, and she'll get busy talking to her group. And really, I think God gave it to me because I love women.
Right.
But I don't try and fly a flag
Sure.
that hates men.
Right.
And I see how women are so
damaging.
needed in the body,
Yeah.
like the rib is.
Yeah.
But they don't realize how needed they are. So they're not playing their part
Yeah.
because no one appreciates them or tells them their part.
Yeah.
And so this ribology thing that I literally have just released recently is taken off because I think, like, just like you're crying, women are like, oh my gosh, this makes so much sense.
Yeah.
This explains me to me. And the more we understand ourselves as women, the more we are at peace with the place that we fit in the body of Christ. And we're not hustling or insecure or trying to make something out of what we don't need to. And so when I reach a place and they don't want me to speak, I'm like, fine, you don't want a rib?
Sure.
That's your choice.
Sure.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I'm only trying to be a rib. I'm trying to protect the heart. I'm trying to help the body breathe. And I'm trying to give people a place of belonging. And
So
if
good.
you don't want a rib, that your heart, without a rib, your heart's vulnerable.
Exposed, yeah.
You know, without a rib, there's going to be some damage that can happen.
Yeah.
And so I don't take that personally anymore because I'm like, I know what God's called me to do and I know what my role is and I'm secure in that. But it took me the journey of having to be under people that were not happy about me being a female and God using me for me to find the way to respond to that had a wisdom attached to it and a stature attached to it, which is why I believe in a lot of places I have been the first female speaker because I think when they're looking for someone to trust into that space for the first time, they want to make sure it's a voice that's going to build the church and not fly a flag.
Right.
So good.
Yeah.
So I've been in a few of those. I could name them, but I won't. But I've been in those churches.
We'll put those in the links.
I've been in those. And you know what? They're lost because honestly, the body's beautiful when both male and female are doing what they're called to do. So,
Yeah.
We've said for last number of years, especially, like the vast majority of churches are absent of a mother's voice. You know, if you think of your home was absent of your voice and it was just your, he's a great guy, I'm sure. You know what I mean? I'm sure he has incredible qualities and abilities.
Yeah.
But there's, especially in the realms of nurturing, I mean, it doesn't have to be unique to a particular sex, but like most churches are only led by a father's voice.
Yeah.
And so I find when Dana ministers, we see more full-grown men come to the altar crying, getting saved because it's the mother's voice that God uses. And it may be that's the only voice they've ever had in their life.
I
like
think
they don't have a dad.
That is.
You know, but I sit and watch them. We have like droves of men. I just think it's so interesting for all these haters out there. Because I'm like, these, I mean, huge, just blubbering guys coming down because they're so impacted by. So I think it's both.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
For sure. But
It's both.
and God's hand and his anointing is evident on whether it's the male, whether it's the female. So it's that's pulling people.
Yes.
It's the God in you.
Absolutely.
It's the God in you. It's that that's drawing the people. So the vessel, we're all freaking out about the vessel, but God's not. God's like, well, I'm using this vessel, so what's your problem?
Exactly.
You know? So I think honestly, you know, we do the church a disservice because half of your congregation can't see themselves.
Yeah.
Well,
true.
usually more than half.
Yeah. Statistically,
They don't.
And especially those who probably have carried the church, the vast majority of the church.
And pray and
truthfully.
intercede. And,
I mean, like, you know, through from behind the scenes, unfortunately, in some regard. But primarily, how many guys are sitting there going, it was my mother, my grandmother that prayed me back into church.
And there's nothing like a woman to mobilize.
For
that's
sure.
That's the rib cage thing.
Yeah.
Nothing like a woman to go, let's get the women
Listen,
and let's
I'll
mobilize.
tell you, like you're preaching to the choir here, because one thing we have talked about a lot, and no disrespect to our male staff members, but like we have female pastors, and I'm like they've raised kids, they've raised husbands, they've done all of it.
Still in process.
And I'm like, they just know how to get stuff done. And don't need a bunch of, like prop me ups. And like, I mean, that, there's a lesson to be learned there, but I mean, love our guys, and I am one, but like, I mean, like seriously, I've just like looked at some of our women pastors and I'm like, man, they just like, I feel like,
we move a lot of dirt.
But that's because we're a rib. A rib is so strong.
But And like the group of female pastors here,
Yeah.
like we connect.
Right.
They're going to take over.
We go to
That's what it
lunch
comes down to.
together.
Right,
Like
right,
we
right.
we just like I need them.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying.
It's funny because like
Yeah.
she has weekly
every other week
meetings with like, just we're gonna get different lunch with the women pastors, whatever. And I'm like, I've never seen the dudes in our staff like, guys, want to get together for lunch? And they do. And I'm like, they're in there plotting and strategizing to take over the world.
Yeah.
And it is just
No, we're
interesting that
not.
connection
We just love
piece.
each other.
I know
It's the
that,
way,
but
it's the way we're designed.
But you know what I mean? Like it is amazing to watch and see
Yeah.
that reality
Yeah.
come to play.
Yeah.
And to think what a loss. I don't know if it's a majority, maybe it's a majority that the church is experiencing because they're ribless.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
They're going through this thing.
And you can't breathe without your ribs.
Yeah.
Mm.
Listen, I know that. I pulled a rib out of place one time and
See?
my wife thought I was having a heart attack.
I did. I thought he was going to die.
Right. And that,
Yeah.
and it's so when I asked that question and I felt God say no one's ever asked me that.
Yeah.
I was like, okay. And I just knew there was a download coming.
Yeah.
And honestly, I didn't realize it would have the effect it is. But I think for churches to have their women understand their role and feel seen
Yeah, so
and
good.
feel understood and realize you can be a problem in the church because women can be,
Yeah.
Yeah.
or you can be a provision in the church.
Mm.
Yeah.
Which way you play your rib is going to be how this thing goes. And so, yeah.
That I got to tell you, I've spent how many years now? 4 or 5 years, like just working through this. Like,
Right.
Yeah.
like the last year doing the work of like recognizing when I get into the pulpit, that guy is always going to get up and leave. And it just derailed me for,
Right.
a couple of months. I was
Right.
like, it
Right.
got me. And I'm like, I don't even like this guy. Like,
Yeah.
why do I care if he's
Right.
here?
I'll put his name in the links too. So
And yet what I understand is I have to become whole to get everything through.
Right.
yeah.
Otherwise
Right.
I'm
Right.
not gonna,
Well, you're waving that flag. That's such a
well, until you're healed and whole, you spill so much stuff in the wrong
Mhm.
places.
Right.
And it comes
Right.
out wrong.
Right.
And to be able to deliver truth with grace,
Right.
I think is the most powerful thing
Right.
that we can do.
Right.
Is to be kind and tell the truth.
Yeah.
So
well, we appreciate you. We appreciate you
Thank
being
you.
the rib out there. And
that
And,
was like I've never heard that before.
You'll have to get the study.
I need to get it
Yeah.
because that like, oh my gosh, the
that was
words.
just a snippet.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a 6 I think it's like 6 videos, so you'll love it.
I
That's
would.
awesome.
That's
Well, thank you for hanging out
Yes.
with us
Of
today. I know it's
course.
been a
Thanks for
full
having
day
me.
in ministry, but I always love that people get a chance to connect and
Sure.
learn a little bit more and hear you. And obviously, we'll put all the details of where they can locate you
Yeah.
and where you're putting all your massive amounts of social media posts up.
Yeah,
And so they can follow every detail of your life. Just woke up, having breakfast.
Yeah, sorry to
you know.
disappoint.
Yeah. Listen, we are, I think our generation, we are the technological, digital
Right.
immigrants, not natives.
Right,
And so
right,
for us,
right.
everything is learned. Like, what? Who
Right.
cares what
Like,
I'm
yeah,
eating?
why,
You know?
why does
Exactly.
anyone care?
Who cares what I'm
Exactly.
doing?
Yeah.
But people love to connect. We've
Yeah.
loved connecting with you and
Thank you.
and excited for all that God's doing with you and
Thank
through
you.
you. And
Thank
so
you.
thanks for being with us. And thank you for being with us as well at the table. And if something's been helpful, love to have you chime into the conversation, comment, like, and share. And you can, all the details will be there for you to follow Charlotte and become even more familiar with the resources ministry. So love you. And we'll see you soon.